Writer David Zweig says the Trump White House came looking for help from the tech companies to combat misinformation about runs on grocery stores. But there were runs on grocery stores. Zweig also reveals Twitter monitored the Trump White House.
Twitter Files number 9 dropped on Christmas Eve. Branden is out this week, so you are listening to Stephanie Bell, and we are glad to welcome back Hannah, the producer.
Good morning.
We're so glad you're back. We've also got Brian Houseworth.
Good to see you.
And
Good to see everybody, and welcome back to Hannah, too.
And John Marsh. All right, so Twitter Files number 9. I wonder, are we going to eventually have to letter these things? How many are there going to be? That's what I really want to know. But number 9 dropped on Christmas Eve. We'll get into that. Of course, getting into that misinformation. How does one tell, and who tells? Is this true? Is this not? Should it be, shadow banned or should it be lessened in the algorithm? But we will dig into Twitter Files number 9. But I want to kind of stay closer to home as we lead off this morning. There was a lot going on in mid-Missouri. Brian, you really dug into the Attorney General's lawsuit against Geyer Gas.
Yeah. I've been working on this story for several weeks, and it kind of caught me by surprise. And everything the Attorney General is alleging in this suit, I've had multiple calls from listeners that indicate this is happening. Now, the one thing that is there is one discrepancy in terms of how many people are impacted. The state representative in that area, Tim Taylor, says about 6,000 customers are impacted. The Attorney General in his lawsuit specifically, Stephanie, says it's about 2,500. So the way I take that is, let's say 4,000 of them or thereabouts maybe have their propane or they didn't prepay. But we know, at least according to the Attorney General's suit, 2,500 people. Most of them are all here in mid-Missouri. There are a few that are outside the listening area, allegedly prepaid for propane, did not get it. And in this lawsuit, and I linked to it on our Eagle website, 939theeagle.com. It's also on kws.com. But I encourage people to read it, but they specifically give a couple of names of people here in mid-Missouri who have been impacted by this basically, according to the Attorney General, the abrupt closing. The biggest example I can see here is a couple named Steve and Darlene Camden. They live in Columbia. They only learned about Geiger closing from the news. They had no idea. They've been a customer there for years. They had prepaid $1,400 for propane that they have never received. And now, here in this freezing cold, and I hate to think what the tank is down now, this was before the weekend, it was 58% depleted. There's another guy, and a guy named Virgil Nichols, who lives here in mid-Missouri. He's owed $700 according to the lawsuit. His 500-gallon tank is 35% depleted. They go on and on in this lawsuit. But basically, no one can get a hold of this company. I've tried to reach them. They don't return calls. The Missouri Attorney General's office cannot get a hold of Geiger Gas. And one other quick note to mention. It's not the Geigers that we all know in Boonville. They sold the company, let this new company come in and keep their name. So it's not the Geigers, although they're taking a lot of criticism. It is a company known as Thaley Incorporated. We believe they have ties to Cottleville. But this is a scathing lawsuit, and I've had an elderly woman that was a widow. She was scared to death, Stephanie, before the storm. Her pilot light was going to go out. So a lot of people scared for this. This is a big deal. It's 12 pages. I encourage people to read the suit. And the Attorney General said it best. If you haven't got your propane, file a complaint with his office.
Yeah, if you've been affected, please reach out to the Attorney General. That's what he's wanting folks to do. And it also highlights what we've seen in other states, just the importance of infrastructure with the cold snap and all of the weather-related impacts we've seen. But, I've been reading about these attacks on substations. And so we've had a string of them. I guess 4 power substations were vandalized near Tacoma in Washington State. That caused, thousands of people to be out of power. I think it was North Carolina 2 weeks ago that had vandalism. And it seems like intentional targeted attacks against basic infrastructure. And I think we've known for a while that is a vulnerability here in America. And, we got other people doing rolling blackouts, but just the importance of infrastructure, the importance of having heat and power. But really what's got me terrified, I think it's horrible this Geiger Gas situation, but what's got me terrified is what is up with these increasing intentional attacks against basic infrastructure.
And that would be a good question for Congressman Luetkemeyer this morning, because he serves on, obviously, the Small Business Committee. Small businesses are impacted, but everyone could be impacted. A lot of those, some of the major ones have security, but some of those particular facilities do not. The Geiger gas situation, a little bit different than that, but the similarity that you point out, Stephanie, is that you got to have heat, especially at this time. But it's just, this looks like a pretty open and shut case. But first things first, they have to find the owners. No one can find them.
Well, yeah, and as like a small government girl, right, like, I don't think the government should be really involved, but I think when we are trying to provide basic services and needs for people, and especially when we're talking about utility infrastructure, it really provides me some concern, and I don't typically want to see government really get involved or, over-regulate, but, this is why in some of these areas we do have significant regulation, because these things, we rely on them and we need them.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, well, the other folks
true.
that I've been wondering if there would be a call for additional regulation is we've seen a rash of fires.
Yes.
In mid-Missouri just over the last several weeks. And I noticed several of them are in apartments or in housing units or, so what do we know? Let's see, I think there was one in Mexico, one in Jefferson City, one in Russellville. What do we know? And is anyone saying, hey, we need to, is there any way to prevent this?
Well, and keep in mind, too, the fatal fire a couple of weeks ago here in Columbia, no working smoke detectors in the apartment. I'll defer to John. John will have a little more detail on the Russellville situation, but that obviously is a concern because that was a senior apartment complex in Jefferson City. But as for Mexico, they're being very tight-lipped. I did reach out over the weekend, the Christmas weekend, and keep in mind he's probably busy, and I know he was working several days, Bryce Mesco, the major in Mexico, to find out. But basically there were two different fires early Friday morning in Mexico, and they're saying very little about the second one. We know the first one was at this apartment building on West Breckenridge. 11 apartments destroyed. Actually, take that back. 9 apartments of the 11 destroyed, and a nearby office destroyed. 60-year-old Ruth Ann Stewart died in that blaze. Also, multiple firefighters were injured because it was -0 and the wind chill was about 30 degrees. They suffered some weather-related injuries. But as they were fighting that blaze of Stephanie and John, another fire broke out nearby on a street called Elmwood. They had no manpower to go to that. They had to bring in the Little Dixie Fire Protection District. So they're being very tight-lipped. But what they are saying, both of those fires in Mexico are under investigation, and if anyone has information, they want them to call Crime Stoppers. And John, without elaborating, that tells me there's something suspicious. They normally don't say that. They do, because technically they're Mexico Public Safety. So, and they had multiple, I believe it was 3, maybe 4 firefighters that suffered there. But that was in Mexico. John could elaborate more on Russellville, because that was a senior housing complex where several seniors were displaced. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And no, just an accidental fire by maybe one of the residents? I like to light my Christmas candles, and I do have a panic attack almost every time I leave my house. Did I get them all blown out, right?
Well, that's just it. And as John mentioned, as far as the Russellville one, the only thing left of that senior facility in Russellville where seniors depend on, the only thing left is the brick, basically, foundation. That is it. It was just completely destroyed. In the Mexico complex, that's not habitable right now. So it was very scary. We've still got the Columbia fire with the deadly fire that's still under investigation. So it's been a rough month, and just be as careful as possible. Make sure you have working smoke detectors.
Yes, I think that's a good reminder to us all. Working smoke detectors, working carbon monoxide detectors. Even if you know you have them, it's a good time to go ahead and check them. I know we did a check, and I think we had one that wasn't working properly. So really good reminder. And obviously we're thinking about all those folks that have been affected over the holidays by the infrastructure issues and by fires. That was kind of a downer, but we have an exciting
Welcome
back, Hannah. I mean, but it's important that we get to some of this stuff. But I am really excited about today's show. Next up, we are going to, let's see, at 6:35, we're going to be talking to Mike Murphy. He's the publisher of COMO Buz, and he follows the Columbia City government, only maybe as closely as Brian Houseworth, right? Those two might be tied for digging into what really is going on there. And two interesting things. There's a new lawsuit out against the city of Columbia, and then he's also looking at the city's use of asset forfeiture funds, which always draws a strong debate. So I read 2 articles he recently wrote about that. I'm excited to talk to him. We also have a very special guest. My sister will be in. If you're looking to have the best new year ever, she's going to talk to us about the enneagram. That will be in the 7 o'clock hour. But up next, we're going to have your daily DC rundown. And Mike Pence isn't usually on Twitter for something cool, but he was trending yesterday on Twitter.
Pence has been mulling a 2024 presidential bid, but there's been no announcement. But it trended on Twitter, and some news outlets reported that he'd filed a statement of candidacy with the FEC. Not true, says the former Veep spokesman.
And this is your daily DC rundown with Stephanie Bell. So Mike Pence usually isn't trending on Twitter, and we should have known when he started trending on Twitter yesterday. It was through no fault of his own. He is not a marketing genius, I don't think.
Bless his heart.
But someone duped reporters and others on Twitter. Somebody filed some paperwork saying that a Mr. Mike Richard Pence was going to run for president in 2024. But apparently people caught on not too soon after because his name's not Mr. Mike. His legal name's Michael. And so when he's filed in the past, they said, hey, this isn't the real paperwork. But for about, I don't know, an hour or two, everyone got very excited and said, he's officially filed.
I mean, I'm sure if he is considering it, he probably loved the press on it, right?
I mean, he doesn't get a whole lot of other press right now. So, yeah, I'm sure he loved being the trending guy on Twitter. The other trending guy we are going to be watching in the next week is, of course, Kevin McCarthy. The speaker's race is just 1 week away. Again, House Republicans have 222 seats, so he needs 218 votes, and that's assuming everyone shows up and everyone's voting.
Which never happens.
Right. So that's a very narrow margin. So he is out there making all kinds of promises. One of the latest promises was some members of the House said, hey, we're not going to support you unless you agree to block basically all of the bills from any senator who voted for the big government funding bill right before Christmas. And so McCarthy has said, yep, I'll take that. And I'll take your votes. And so if the senator voted for the big government funding to avoid the shutdown, we will their bills basically will be dead on arrival. And so I think that added a couple more votes. But again, he's got a very narrow margin. So we will be watching that, and we will know here in about a week. Also, I'm going to call this the Idiot Watch, I think. It came out over the holiday that a New York representative-elect, George Santos, apparently lied about his resume when he was running in the midterms. And I feel like, I think he called it like embellishing.
It's all about how you spin it.
With the age of the internet, like how did you think no one was going to find out? And then B, from like the people who opposed him, how is this he just ran a campaign. How is this just now coming out? But apparently he claimed he had worked for Goldman Sachs and Citigroup. He claimed he had graduated from this college in New York. He has now said he never worked directly with either of those firms, and he'll be clearer about that. He also said he never graduated from any institution of higher learning. And he says, I will give him credit for this. He says, I own up to that. We all do stupid things in life.
There's some jobs and some professions that you could probably fib on your resume a little bit.
Yes.
Politics, probably not one of those professions.
Right. So the Democrats are calling for his resignation. He's apologizing. We'll see what happens to him. Also, internationally, I guess Ukraine's foreign minister is talking about wanting to have a February peace summit. But not a whole lot is expected out of that because he's saying, yeah, we're going to have a peace summit about solving this issue with Russia, but we don't anticipate Russia will even be there. So I don't think many people are hopeful for anything to come of that peace summit. And so that is your today's daily DC rundown. We are coming up next, 6:35. We will have Mike Murphy, publisher of COMO Buz. We'll be talking about a new lawsuit against the City of Columbia and the City of Columbia's position on asset forfeiture. Of course, later today, we will also, in the 8 o'clock hour, we will be joined by Congressman Blaine Luetkemeyer, asking him about what's in that government funding bill. You're listening to Wake Up Mid-Missouri. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I am Stephanie Bell sitting in for Branden Rathert this morning, and we've got producer Hannah and Brian Houseworth and John Marsh. And we all hope certainly that you are listening in from the comfort of your home or your car and not listening on the app stranded in some airport across America, as many people were this weekend. I know I saw my Facebook feed was full of some friends who were making some pretty epic and unexpected road trips over the holidays, but lots of airline cancellations over the holidays. But good news. I don't know what's going on, Hannah, but tomorrow we're expecting it to be 53 and Thursday 62. So,
yeah, because why not?
Because why not? But at least with those warmer temps, hopefully we can cure some of these travel woes. We are really excited to welcome in Mike Murphy. He's the publisher of COMO Buz, and he recently published two pieces that caught my attention about the Columbia City Council. And interestingly, one involves somebody in Ashland. And so an Ashland farmer filed a lawsuit against the city of Columbia. Mike, can you tell us what this is all about?
Good morning, everybody. Sure. Well, this Ashland farmer who's been on that property around the airport since 1951, continuously. So he's 73 years old now and has been farming that property his whole life. There's about 400 acres there that he grows wheat and corn, soybeans. And basically, the city did a bidding process, which isn't unusual. Last year, there's a lot of unusual things around it, and there's some irregularities, of course, is why it's ending up in court. But at the end of the day, our farmer, Paul Garrett, he lost the bid to a upstart organic farmer from Ashland named Jerome Jake Taylor. Now, Jerome's getting dragged into this for different reasons, but there's no accusations of any impropriety on his part. I say that up front. It's all Garrett versus the city. Garrett claims that he already had a lease in place, which isn't unusual. It wasn't signed by the city, which wasn't unusual. That the bidding process had a lot of irregularities. They submitted bids for some reason that Garrett doesn't have a sufficient explanation. They went back for a best and final offer. Taylor changed his bid. Garrett didn't change his bid. Then there was an evaluation committee where this gets a little bit of drama coming in. The evaluation committee is made up of the airport manager, Mike Parks, and Stacy Button, who's the president of Ready and the city's economic development director. And at the end of the day, they made the decision to move the lease over to Jake Taylor. And Garrett's coming now, bringing the suit based on all the irregularities in the bidding process. He's actually accusing them of helping Taylor win it. He's accusing them of giving him inside information. And then he's making a case that the city's evaluation criteria, that actually if they, to put it frankly, had any idea what they were doing, he would have won it anyway.
Mike, Brian Houseworth here. We appreciate you joining us, and I've read your story, very detailed, and as always, a fine job. It's a little complex, and that's a hard one to kind of tell in 30 seconds, but I've read your story. You did update the story to include comments from Sydney Olson, who's the spokesperson for the city. Looks like she didn't talk to you, but maybe emailed you. But she writes this. I'm going to have you elaborate as best you can. She says this, quote, "The city takes allegations of employees going outside of our processes seriously. The city did look into accusations of insider information being provided to a bidder by a City of Columbia employee, but found no evidence to prove these accusations had any merit." End of quote. Did she elaborate on that?
No. So as you know, if you call the city about some pending litigation, they generally take the position that they don't comment on pending litigation. Right. End of story. Which really is not a very good PR move, but often the legal move or the smart legal thing to do, which is usually what drives these things. So instead of asking that question, I asked via email to the city manager's office and to the city attorney's office, what is their process when an employee is charged or an employee is accused of this type of we would call it shenanigans or being involved in something like this. From an HR standpoint, do they follow it up? Is there an investigation? Do they take the complaint seriously? So I didn't really go to the lawsuit. I went to that question,
Sure.
and that got that response back, which I was glad to get it because they need a response in there that says what often gets lost in these lawsuits. So somebody files and they bring all their grievances forward, and you don't get the response for 30 days. And if they don't comment, it just kind of leaves it hanging. So at least they said that, no, we don't agree with this. There's another side to this story, and that'll be coming out, soon enough.
That's good. I'm glad you included that. And again, you give both sides. That's all you can do.
Now, your other article was about the city's use of funds derived from asset forfeiture, which always draws a heated debate. And when we kind of got maybe an insight as to how the city feels about asset forfeiture with maybe a unlikely hero kind of questioning the issue. Can you provide us some more details on that?
Well, I think probably most people, if anybody, realizes that across the country this practice of asset forfeiture is very controversial. Agencies have the right under certain conditions to seize assets from suspected criminal activity. That can be cars, homes, often cash. It's used mostly in drug law enforcement. They seize drugs and cash. If it is property, it can later be sold, and it often isn't reclaimed by the people who lost it because they have to go through a court process, and that's what makes it controversial. The people don't necessarily have to be charged or found guilty to have assets seized. And there's a lot of people who think the practice should be stopped on both sides of the political spectrum. The ACLU is very much against it, has position papers on it, and something as libertarian as the Cato Institute. I want to try to get a spectrum there. They're very much against it and have position papers on it. But it still goes on, and what happens is if the DEA or the FBI or federal agency comes into Columbia or Boone County and makes forfeitures as part of their or seizes assets as part of their law enforcement process, a share of those ultimately make their way back to the local agency, which in this case would be Columbia PD. We find out just incidentally, for one thing, this was in the consent agenda, and there was no real feeling that this would come up, and I didn't see it in the newspapers or anything. It was just kind of like something since 1999, the police chief, as far as his records go back, they've been every year when they get this money, they collect it, and they have to send in they have to certify how they're using it. Well, right now there's an account that has about $317,000 in total, and they're going through the motions of sending in a report, which would need to be endorsed by the city council, that certifies, yes, we have this money and this is how they spent it. Now, they haven't spent any in at least 4 years, so it's just kind of one of these things that sits there. You might remember it came up a few weeks ago when they were going to buy this Fusus platform to link up the security cameras. They were going to pay for it with these asset forfeiture funds. So it's kind of like this side fund that accumulates outside of the city budget that the police chief has some discretion on how to spend, of course, with council authority, and there's limits of how he can spend it. To make this – go ahead.
No, go right ahead.
Well, in the consent agenda, the city was going to approve this, but somebody brought up, actually Pat Fowler, councilperson Pat Fowler from the 1st Ward, pointed out that when they were talking about Fusus to students at MU, the students' opinion was, well, we don't have a big problem with Fusus, but we have a real big problem with asset forfeiture and seizure. And that got her onto it. Then this other activist guy came in, and he made a little bit of a pitch against it. At the end of the day, the council went ahead and approved it like they typically always have, but it was a 5-2 vote with Fowler and the Ward 3 council person, Roy Lovelady, casting dissenting votes.
And were any members of the public speaking out about that?
Yeah, this guy named Anthony Wilroth, he's got a business downtown. It's called the Reef, the Basement Reef. And he has been in front. He's been in front of council a few times now. He often speaks during the public comment period. He was very, very much against the Fusus system, and and spoke against it and actually organized against it. He's developing a pretty, he's a voice in front of council frequently enough now. Yeah, he got up and spoke and basically reiterated that, this is controversial. There's people against it, and the suggestion is if you don't believe this should be happening, the place to start is we have to start turning down that money at the local level. And he encouraged council to vote no and quit participating in this program.
Well, and I liked the comment of starting at the local level. I know you've been covering the local school board races and other races that are open, and I got a reminder yesterday from somebody that candidate filing does close today at 5 p.m. So I think you can confirm this for me. I think it's 4 people have filed for 3 open seats in Columbia?
I think it's up to 7
7.
now.
Oh, 7. Okay.
Yeah. 3 more filed, and I decided to wait instead of another intermediate story till the end of the day today, and I'll get something on that out tomorrow, as I suspect others will also. But yeah, there's a total of 7 who have filed in Columbia now.
All right, and I know, filing closes across mid-Missouri, so if you're looking for a change, today is your day to get into your city hall and sign up. Well, Mike, we always appreciate the chance to talk with you. I know you're keeping a close eye on city government for us. So if we want to read these stories in detail, where can folks go?
www.comobuz.com, 1Z, or just Google it. It'll pop up any kind of city story. It'll be there. You can go take a look.
Thank you so much. Coming up next, we are going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that's initiative petitions. And I know some people are saying it's early to talk about candidate filing in 2024, but there are already initiatives being pushed for 2024. We will identify those just here in 5 minutes. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Stephanie Bell in for Branden Rathert, but I'm going to channel Rathert right now and say, I told you so, because we know it's something he really enjoys saying.
Yet he claims he doesn't.
But he does.
Yeah.
Don't we all, though? I mean, we all like to say, I told you so.
It feels good to be right.
And one of my favorite subjects is to talk about initiative petitions. You can start filing initiative petitions basically as soon as the election is over, and people have already done that. So I really enjoy talking about it. And I said early on when ranked choice missed the ballot, I said, I think they will be back. And I think it was a really expensive process. There was an article, I think, in the Kansas City Star this weekend about how much money they spent and how they missed the signature verification by just under, But and so I said, I think they're coming back. I think they're going to make another run at Missouri. What we know is the ranked choice voting people were making runs in several states. But John, did you ever, in your mind, really understand? I mean, you're a smart guy. I feel like I'm smart. I still don't know that I, even after reading it and after, reading about it, that I ever really got a handle on how it would actually work. Well, for this on the initiative petitions, yeah, I mean, as far as how they do the titles. They can be, and that's really played out in the courts, and the courts have really, given proponents pretty wide latitude. And so it's not, when you think of just like, well, a single subject, it can be fairly broad, just as we see kind of the bills in the legislature have gotten kind of broad. It really has to be connected with one subject. And so a lot of times that's the main challenge people bring against initiatives is that, hey, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. And obviously when the titles are either limited to 50 or 100 words, maybe folks who are going to the ballot box aren't fully aware of everything that's, in there. And that's certainly an attack against, and it has been an attack against many initiatives in the past. But it would be, I think at this point, it would take it would take a change in how the courts have been kind of interpreting those rules to tighten those things down or take a constitutional amendment regarding initiatives. And we know that initiative petitions are going to be on the legislature's agenda this year. And they've said it for a number of years. I guess John Patterson, who's from Lee Summit, the majority floor leader, is saying permanent changes to the process should reflect broad support from the citizens and not just the special interests that can flood it with unlimited amounts of money. And so it's been a target for some time. They haven't been able to get it done. Apparently bills that have been filed already this year include two of the more important provisions. And John, I'm not sure that they have talked about anything regarding the titles yet. But I haven't been through all of the bills that have been pre-filed. But one that they want to do, I know, is increase the number of votes that would basically allow it to pass. So like 60%. Yeah, exactly. And under that, if they went to a 2/3 majority, it's important to know that none of the recent ballot measures that we have approved in Missouri, like medical or recreational marijuana or Medicaid expansion, would have hit that 2/3 threshold. But that's been kind of a rallying cry for them is, hey, we need a broader base of support in order to amend the Constitution in particular. Other folks are saying, hey, maybe we should just make it harder to get things on the ballot and we should have a higher signature requirement. So lots of proposals kind of floating out there. But I kind of got angry when I saw this article in NBC, and it was talking about the recent Supreme Court abortion decision. And it's, I'll quote from this article. It said, Republican-led legislatures are now mounting an increasingly fierce battle to curb the ability of citizens and other lawmakers to place ballot measures or to place measures on the ballot. And they said a move progressive groups say is explicitly aimed at making it difficult to give voters direct say over issues such as abortion rights. So what they're saying is now that this abortion issue is getting kicked to the states, conservatives are conspiring to make it harder for people like abortion advocates to put things on the ballot. And I'm thinking, how long have we been talking about initiative petition reform in Missouri? It's not since Dobbs. Right. I found one article from April of 2019 where the House cleared an initiative petition reform bill, and it was stalling in the Senate. So that has been fact check NBC, and that is completely false. We will be coming right back at the top of the hour with the latest on the AG lawsuit. This is Stephanie, and you're listening to Wake Up Mid-Missouri, and that was Governor Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota, playing with her Christmas gift. Apparently, a couple years ago, she joked and said to her staff, "Is it too late to add a flamethrower to my Christmas list?" And her staff came through this year and gave her a flamethrower, and there is a video on Twitter of her lighting some, I think, Amazon boxes on fire. So that had to... Right. That had to be a highlight for her Christmas. Hannah, other than finally feeling better and not being sick,
Yay!
Did you have, that's a Christmas miracle.
It is.
Did you have, what was your highlight?
I got to see tons of family. I come from a blended family, so lots of running around for Christmas Eve and Christmas. We got to start asking our bridesmaids and groomsmen to be a part of our wedding party, so that was kind of fun. And we got our ring bearers nailed down to my little twin nephews who are like 14 months old. So that was really fun.
That's going to be so sweet. Now you're just going to have to decide what it is that you will have to use to bribe them down the aisle, whether it's money or chocolate bars or what.
Right now it's the little cereal puffs and their favorite YouTube video of a cartoon.
I love it. Brian, what was your highlight from the holiday weekend here?
You know, trying to still fighting a little bit on the, I'm very close to beating it, but it's taken a long time, this sinus infection. So I was on the Mizzou broadcast. I think that may have been the highlight. I really enjoyed that, although that game, goodness gracious, Mizzou with all those penalties in the bowl game, that was a disappointment. But I think maybe the best highlight, a beautiful mass at Our Lady of Lourdes.
Nice.
And giving thanks. I think that's very important, giving thanks and being kind. That's really what it's all about.
John, what were you giving thanks for over the holiday weekend? Right.
Yes.
Oh, right. So much good food. It was a wonderful holidays. Of course, we hope that you are listening to the show from the warmth of your home or the warmth of your car and not stranded like the thousands of people that we have seen across the TV screens and the Twitter. I had lots of friends saying, do I just rent a car and drive 12 hours? Because there is literally no way out for some of these folks.
Well, that's just it. I mean, to the point where St. Louis, there was a national correspondent from NBC News. John may have seen him, and the name escapes me. He must be fairly new because I didn't recognize his name, but he was doing some national reports about the weather based at Lambert Field, was trying to get a flight yesterday out of St. Louis, and the earliest they can get him out of any airline, according to his reporting, is Friday.
Wow.
Cars aren't available, according to him, and I saw similar pictures in Nashville and everything. U.S. Transportation Department is launching an inquiry to find out what happened. And if you look at their Twitter, they're very critical of Southwest Airlines right now. That's Pete Buttigieg. But, yeah, that's, and some of the folks, I mean, that's exactly. In the lines at Lambert and some of the other television video that I saw was just amazing. And there's only so many cars to rent right now, so that's not good.
Yeah, I've seen the prices reflect that, and I've heard that the airfare is we're in for it next year for those trying to make travel plans in the next year as well. So you would think so. You would hope so. You would hope so. Or you can, I know when Branden had a problem, he contacted the Better Business Bureau. So if you're having travel woes, maybe you can get some help from our friends there.
Yes.
Brian, over the holiday weekend, I read this story about drugs in Missouri prisons, and I am thankful that you're here because you have, some insight having worked at corrections. But I mean, some of it was just, I thought, unbelievable.
Yes.
What they're saying is there was a new mail policy that took effect on July 1, and essentially no mail, prison inmates can't receive mail. Their mail goes to like Florida, it gets scanned, and they get like an electronic copy of the mail. And that was to try to prevent drugs from entering the prison. but it's actually gotten worse. They said prior to July 1, 48 inmates died in Missouri prison custody, and there's been 60 deaths in the 5 months since. And although I don't think they know the reasoning for all of the deaths in the prison, they're saying it can't all be natural causes because the ages are, people in their 40s.
Right. Yeah, a couple things. I believe that was a Riverfront Times. You sent that. I believe I want to give them credit. Was it correct?
It is Riverfront
Yes.
Times. Mm-hmm.
And very, very progressive publication, very liberal, but I will tell you their reporting is very good. And they document everything that they say in there, and they give some specific examples. And they do. When I was at corrections, I have to tell you, I thought they did a fine job, and they wrote some tough stories about the department, but they were fair. For a alternative publication that doesn't get a lot of attention, their journalism is really good. I've been gone since 2008, so I've been gone a long time. Some of the drugs that are mentioned in there, I don't remember. But, there are two main areas that, three, and one of them they've taken out of the equation now with the mail. But when I was there, the drugs would either come in from the visiting room through the visiting room. That's still, I'm sure, very common. The problem is if these people don't have visitors, they have a hard time, acclimating to society, so you got to have the visiting rooms up. But as the article points out, it's a small number overall, but it happened when I was there, probably a dozen times, and they give some specific examples. It is employees, or in one case, a cook, that was bringing drugs into the institution. That did happen when I was there. Two very quick stories. Number one, that article, the most troubling thing to me about that is and they give a name of the guy. He's a corrections officer. If he hasn't been fired yet, it says he's still an officer in Licking. And it says he was paid $30,000 to bring drugs in. But if you read that article closely, he says, and he should have gone to the FBI and to his warden and to the highway patrol, but he said 2 inmates. And if they're in Licking, chances are they're murderers. That's a maximum security. They're not in there for, stealing, food or anything like that. They're probably in there for murder or rape. That's a maximum security level 5 institution. According to him, he had 2 inmates that threatened him, told him they would kill his kids, knew where he lived, knew when the kids came home, and they would do all of that unless he agreed to bring drugs into the institution. I don't ever remember anything like that when I was there. If it happened, I certainly am not aware of it. That is deeply troubling. And he apparently complied with that, and now he's been caught apparently meeting them at the Jack in the Box. Again, the reporting in there is very detailed. The last thing I would tell you, my first night on the job, January 31st, 2006, the director of the department and I, Larry Crawford, were going to an execution in Bonne Terre. It ended up being caught. It ended up being, postponed by the courts. But there was basically a roadblock set up by the Bonne Terre, and as I recall, the highway patrol going into the prison, and it's like a fortress anyway on an execution. But they were searching vehicles as we were going into the prison, including the director's car. I was in the car with him. Obviously, we had nothing in that car, but they searched everyone. Didn't matter who you were. 2 or 3 cars behind us was an employee there at the prison, and they searched his car, and there were television stations right behind him. A large amount of drugs in that car. Wow. And it was the TV stations had video. Unfortunately, it happens. It's a small amount, but based on what you're seeing there, it looks like it's increased. The other thing is that the ages don't matter as much because 80 to 90% of the inmates, when I was there, and I'm sure it's the same case, they didn't have any care. They didn't go to the doctor before they were going in. So if they were 45, the doctor said their bodies were like they were 65. Wow. So, but they're not all dying from natural causes. And it sounds to me, especially the gentleman at the Ozark facility, it's a drug treatment center. He says everybody at that prison's getting high. They're sneaking K2 in. I mean, it's a scathing article. Karen Pojman, who's the public relations director of the department, she did a fine job responding to it, but it is it's a troubling story.
Well, and I didn't take it so much as a knock on the Department of Corrections, but just as the pervasiveness of the drugs coming in, and more about what do we do at the border, because they say what's coming into our prisons is fentanyl, which we know is a problem, right here in Columbia. We've had dozens of deaths already this year, and then this K2, which I guess is a synthetic marijuana substance. And so, I think definitely I'd be interested to hear what Department of Corrections plans to do. I remember showing up as an employee at like Dillard's and having to carry a clear purse to make sure I wasn't stealing anything from the store. And so, how can you prevent these folks from, bringing it in? And that threat has to be, I think, investigated.
Well, that should be, whether he gets charged or not. I mean, and again, looking back on it, and he was probably scared, but that's something. Yep. They don't, and that's been an issue for years, and it's been an issue in the rural communities, no question. And that's one of the reasons Church Farm ended up being closed, John, a number of years ago. Was it all related to that? But that threat, that is deeply troubling, because again, I don't remember that, but in that case, and I can't speak for what he should have done, but looking back on it, because he's probably going to end up losing his career over this, because he was scared. But he agreed to take the drugs in based on the report. That should have been taken to the FBI, the Highway Patrol, and to the warden before. I mean, because now, and we don't know who the inmates are. The inmates obviously need to be investigated, those two, if that's what happened.
Yes, I think so. Well, we've got Bruce on the line who has something to say. Welcome into the show, Bruce.
Yeah, I used to be a corrections officer, and I left in 2015, and the drugs have been a problem for a long time. Back then, I would find drugs and stuff, and I would be told to throw it away and not do the paperwork because they wanted to make sure the reports showed that there wasn't a drug problem.
Wow.
And every good officer I know has quit since then because it's only gotten worse. Like, they brought these tablets in. I know one guy that I was an officer with that he was still working. He said within the first week they had taken two of them apart and made shanks, and they had hacked one of them, and it was getting to their victims because it was supposed to be limited on the internet, and they had hacked it and took off the limitations. I remember there was one night I actually found a big shank and was told, throw it away, don't do any paperwork, so they could keep the numbers down.
No doubt it's a dangerous place to work, and with the short staffing and just the environment, it's difficult, and it certainly presents challenges for those in the system, the inmates and the staff.
Well, and if what he's alleging, and again, I'm been gone a long time, he has some specific examples there that are concerning, and if Karen Posman's listening, I'm sure she'd be concerned about that. I know that sort of behavior did not go on when I was there. If it did, I didn't know about it, but I was in touch with the wardens all the time, and I would get the reports, and we'd see the numbers. I mean, if people got caught with drugs, those reports came in. Shanks, so I'm not sure. And as far as hacking the iPads, that would be a concern, especially if they're contacting their victims. See, this is the problem. People have to understand these folks, murderers, rapists and stuff, they are supposed not to have any contact with victims. Well, if they're hacking into the computers, and this may be one or two cases, and contacting their victims, that needs to be brought to the judge's attention, the judge in the case, because they could get charged with another crime, and they should be if they're doing that, because that sounds to me like they're trying to intimidate.
Well, and according to the Riverfront Times, it was people on the outside who were making cash or Venmo or Cash App type payments to pay these folks to bring the drugs into the prison, right? And so there are also people, on the outside that are facilitating this drug trade within the prison. That's
based on the reporting and family members too, and and again, some of it just comes in through the visiting room, but. Scathing article, but what that gentleman just called in on, that is concerning too.
Mm-hmm. Well, coming up next, we will be doing What's Hot with Hannah. Hannah, we have missed you so much. We've been doing I think we were doing What's Cooking with Chris.
Oh boy, that's fun.
And it was a lot of sports for cooking. I assume yours is not sports.
It is not sports.
All right. All right, it's 7:25-ish, which means it's
7:27. No. I hate it when Brandon's not here and we still can't do What's Hot with Hannah on time because it's easier to just blame him for being late, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Stephanie, I know that you don't like birds. That's on your suck list. Is that what we've coined it?
Yep, sure don't.
Well, how do you feel about bats?
Also no.
Well, it's probably a good thing you don't live in Houston then. Okay. Houston, I guess, is home to one of the biggest bat colonies in the country. There is a colony that lives in the Houston area that is over 300,000 bats.
Whoa.
And they're struggling right now.
The bats or the people who have to live with the bats?
Yes. So it's been really cold everywhere in the U.S., obviously. You know, it was -20 real feel here last week. Houston, it's gotten down into the 20s for the first time since like the 90s. I have a niece who goes to Baylor, and she said that the Texans are freaking out over these 20-degree temperatures.
Well, I was freaking out too, honestly, over the cold weather.
Oh, yeah. So I bet you weren't freaking out as bad as the bats, who are basically just dropping from the sky.
Oh, gross.
Because it's so cold that they just get stunned. And they basically just...
Like fainting goats, just like from the air?
Yes.
Oh, no.
And I guess I shouldn't be laughing because some of them are dying.
Oh.
But they're basically just falling out of the sky. And...
Nope.
There's... People with the Humane Society are going around and basically picking up these stunned bats off the ground.
And what do? Like heat them up or something?
Yeah, they're putting them in a box and taking them to a warm location to try to warm them up and save them.
Don't give Columbia any ideas. Soon we're going to have like bat warming places. Jeez. So they're just falling out of the sky.
Pretty much. There's some bridges that they like to hang out on the underneath side of.
No, thank you.
And folks from the Humane Society are just going around with their little basket, picking up cold, almost dead bats off the ground.
Thanks for the nightmares
You're welcome.
going to have tonight. Coming up, my sister will be joining us. How to have your best year yet, what you need to know about the Enneagram and yourself. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I am Stephanie Bell in for Branden Rathert. This is one of my favorite weeks of the year, honestly. And I think for a lot of people, it's their favorite week of the year because most people just chill and are like, we'll take care of that after the new year. So it's a slower week. But for me, when it's slower, I like to start planning for my new year. I'm very what people would call type A. I like my little goals and my checklist. And so I'm always thinking okay, what can I implement for the new year that will give me the best year ever? I have a big birthday coming up next year, so I think that's
30, right?
Yeah, 30. Yeah. And so that's added a little bit of pressure. So I wanted to, I talked to my Instagram friends and said, hey, what can we talk about that would help you have the best year yet? And they're like, I want to know, what can I do personally that could, advance my life? And so I brought in my sister, Sara Amick, who is in town, and she is all right, say that again. Say hello.
Hello.
All right, I got it. And so so we're excited to have you, and I know you came and did a 4-hour session with my girls book club on the Enneagram, and in my life you're the Enneagram expert. But for folks who are unfamiliar with that, tell us what the Enneagram is.
Yeah, so the Enneagram, it sounds kind of crazy, but it's really not. It's a personality typing tool that describes your patterns of behavior and the motivations behind those behaviors.
Okay, so I think we're all familiar with basic. I did the Myers-Briggs in high school, and I know, type A is a personality type thing, but how does the Enneagram differ, I guess, from other?
Yeah, so there's 9 types, and those 9 types are all based on different motivations that everyone has. So it's 9, you can say 9 types of seeing the world. And it's different from other ones because it's based on your motivation, and only you know your motivation. Others, and it's very dynamic in that you're not stuck in this one type. There's ways to grow, and it's just a great self-awareness tool to reach your goals and to connect better with your family, your work, your kids, whoever. Yeah,
I mean, I think for me, my eyes kind of opened more when I realized okay, not everyone is motivated by this, and know that, but I don't think I realized how many different motivations there were, and so knowing that not everyone is seeing the world through my lens helps me. I'm obviously not perfect at it, but so and you meet people and you're you're this number. And so you told me, I know you could, she's like, you can pay, you can take the test, but I know what you are. Is that a skill that you've developed or?
Well, I think again, it's all about self-awareness. So when you become more self-aware of who you are, you start to notice different patterns that maybe are similar to someone else. Or as you learn about the different types, you really start to see some of those patterns come out in other people, and you say, that looks a lot like Stephanie, or it's so I think over time when you learn about it, things start to stick out. But I'm not perfect by any means. Only you know your motivation. So
it's kind of like here at Zimmer on our company phone list. Next to each person's name, we use the colors test.
Yes,
it actually lists out next to your name on the company phone sheet, what your colors are. And so if you're headed into a difficult conversation with one of your coworkers, you can just whip out your little sheet, see what their top color is. And for those not familiar with the color test, it's very similar to this Enneagram thing that we're talking about. It's just much more simple. So my top color is blue. So I'm emotional. I like to tell stories.
I'm also blue.
That's Sara.
I'm a blue red. Yeah.
I like to chit chat, about my personal life, and I like to ask people about their personal life, and we're real flowery and squirrely.
Yeah, so I think the Enneagram does that too on a much deeper scale. Yes. So showing the best parts of you, but also the parts of you you want to hide and swift under the rug. But that can be really helpful when you're dealing with conflict.
Yeah, and I think so you shift to different different numbers in times of when you're feeling good and relaxed, and then when you're really stressed. And so I've been able to identify okay, if I'm behaving in this way, then it's for sure I'm in a space that's really not myself, that I have moved away from my normal baseline.
Right. Everybody operates in their average space, but when you start to become stressed. You can take on characteristics of another number. Every number is tied to two different numbers. And that helps you to kind of know, hey, this is blocking me from getting to my goals, blocking me from talking to my coworkers, those sorts of things. And you can do something about that. You can't change if you don't know.
So let's dig down and get really specific, because I suspect that Hannah is a 2 as well.
Yeah. I was going to talk about you.
Deflection.
Yeah, right.
I am a 2 though. Yes.
Yeah. So you're a 2.
Yeah.
What do we like? So if I learn my number, like what kinds of things have you learned about being a 2?
Yeah, I think overall, just knowing that you know a lot more about what motivates me. Like, I really want to please others. I want, as long as I'm indispensable, like I'm loved and I will get what I need in the world. But then when you start to realize that not everybody needs help and not everybody needs the way I think they need help. So when I start to notice that, I can say, oh, actually, what do you actually need? And that helps, I mean, one time I grilled 90 hot dogs for my 3rd grade. Because one of my coworkers said, this is the best way to reward after testing season. And I was like, yes, I'll do that. I spent like 4 hours grilling hot dogs on a night that was wasting my time. Did I want to do that? No, but I wanted them to like me, and I wanted to be seen as good,
And so when you're stressed, what happens to a 2? Like, how do you identify?
I moved to an 8 space, which basically is like a bull in a china shop. So you become like the capital B. So it's not fun to be around, but again, those characteristics also help me to say no. So for now that I have that energy, I can use that to say, nope, I'm not going to do that. And it creates boundaries, which is really good for me.
And so do you think it's like helped you at work, understanding like with coworkers?
Yeah, for sure.
Just interacting on an everyday.
Yeah. And again, that goes back to that level of conflict or just even connection. And when you're thinking about goals and setting goals for the new year, knowing how other people kind of operate and how they see the world, you're able to not dance around conversations, but really get to what the problem is or what the goal is and kind of get through the muck, if you will.
So when you're stressed, you go to an 8, but then when you're
when I'm more self-aware, I can take on characteristics of a 4, which means I'm very self-aware of my own needs. 2s are very good at deflecting what they need and very self-servant. So they can a 4 says, oh, I have all these needs, and let me tend to that first before, like, put on my own oxygen mask before I help someone else.
I can hear John kind of giggling in the background very quietly.
Yeah.
John, do you happen to know what enneagram type you are?
Oh, yeah. Hi, John. Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I think what's the loyal one? Like the loyalty
that's
one?
a 6.
Yeah. For a lot of folks in my life, I see that one, I think. But it's
what do you identify as?
I'm either a 1 or a 3. I think I'm a 1.
Yeah. And I think again, that it can take time to know your type, and that's through self-observation. Some people know it right away, but yeah.
People think 1s are very clean, even though, like, I'm organized. I'm not very clean.
That's behavior, but again, it's based on motivation.
You ought to see the studio sometimes, Sarah, when Steph is maybe running just a few minutes late in the morning, and she comes in and decides to do her makeup here at work.
I've seen that.
The entire studio turns into Stephanie's makeup room.
It really does.
Wherever she goes.
So if I'm a person and I'm looking for, like, because there's authors, there's tests you can take online, there's free tests. So if I'm thinking this is something I want to implement in my own life, because there's really interesting, like, case studies out there too about the, like, different numbers in romantic relationships, right? And I think those are really fascinating as well. But, maybe I'm just at work and I want to, know my team better. What resources are out there for me?
Yeah, there's the Enneagram Institute. I think you're linking that on your page today. That's a great starting point. There's a book called The Road Back to You, which is a great starting point as well. It has lists. I think lists are really helpful when you're trying to determine your number. And that's a good, I would say, start there. And then, because there's so much out there, and so not to overwhelm people, but start with one book and see what resonates for you. You can start with a test. Again, a test can't measure motivation, But so I'd encourage you, take some work, but it's definitely worth it. I think it's enriched my life and my work life and my relationships with all people.
It feels like, so it does feel a little bit woo-woo, which I think is why we were getting a little bit of giggles from John in the background.
Does.
And I thought, I am not,
though, you know,
I am not a woo-woo person either. And so when I first started hearing about it, I was like, oh, I don't know. But I do think it's given me additional insights. But I also think it's become a little bit like cringe or chuggy in that we've seen some like comedy sketches. I'll have to pull the one for us about people who like put it in their dating profile or their how do you, as someone who like really thinks that they've benefited from the enneagram, how do you, it's gotten kind of popular and then people make jokes about it, so how do you kind of respond to folks who are like, oh, you know, it's a
well, and I think again it goes back to, we all want to know more about ourselves, but then it doesn't stop there. So once you know your number, everyone's like, oh, you're such a 2 or you're such a 1. That's like not the point. The point is to like know more about yourself in order to be the best version of yourself that you can be in work and home and relationships. And so to not stop growing. So I identify less and less with the 2 because I'm digging deeper into those parts of me that, you know, are not the greatest parts of me, I guess, if you want to say that, in order to sharpen those so that I can reach my goals and to become a better human.
I love it. Well, if you are looking to have a better 2023, maybe you should take a look at the Enneagram, take the test, put your coworkers or your significant other through the test, and then have a conversation about it. I have found it super helpful. Sara, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, sister.
And up in just a couple of minutes, I think we're going to talk Christmas fails. Did you have any Christmas fails? I think we had some here on the show. I know I did. Those will be coming up right in a few minutes. You are listening to Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Yeah.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I am Stephanie Bell, sitting in for Branden Rathert, and we are joined by producer Hannah.
Good morning.
And John Marsh. And we've got Brian Houseworth, too. I was thinking, did anyone have any Christmas fails?
I had a minor one.
Yeah, we did, too, at our house. And it was like, no one's ever going to know but us, but you still feel like you want everything to go so perfect. Maybe that's the Enneagram 1 in me, my perfectionism. But yeah, when you like don't have, we had some duplicate gifts, which is always a problem in our house. I don't understand how this happens. But yeah, we always have some where the kids get
like your family
gifts.
Members
get
the same thing that you and Chris might have gotten them.
Yeah, and that's hard. And then we had this other gift that we had printed out like a piece of paper because it wasn't like a physical gift. And apparently we all saw it on the 24th and on the 25th. It was nowhere. We still haven't found it. And so that was really disappointing because there was no way to kind of replicate that. And to just say it doesn't feel the same as like opening a fake certificate. And so it was a major fail. But, the
Your kids won't know the difference.
They had no idea. They were super happy. They're, on a chocolate high. So it was fine. What about you, Hannah?
So one of the days that I was off last week, I finished up my Christmas shopping in Jefferson City, and I was going to meet my fiance for lunch at, where he works. And we use Life 360.
Yes.
Which we've talked about before. I get made fun of for. But basically, we can see each other's location.
Sure.
And he went to kind of just check on me to see where I was. And he noticed I was at a store, and he immediately guessed what gift I was getting. And he totally spoiled his Christmas gift, which was kind of a bummer. But it's something I guess we can laugh about now. The one time he checked his location that day, it just so happened to be when I was getting his gift.
It gave it away. I know that's happened when you get like packages shipped to the house and they have like the picture of the box or whatever, and you're thinking,
There was a couple years ago, so in my family, we really like to make Amazon wish lists for Christmas.
We do that too.
Because it's really easy to just share that with your family. Well, I had a setting messed up somewhere, and there was one year that Amazon basically told me what all of my Christmas gifts were. So I knew everything I was getting from my family that year, so that was a little bit of a Christmas fail.
Our Alexa will like play notifications, and sometimes you can say like play the notification, and she will announce what got delivered. And so it has ruined it for our kids before, and I don't know how to turn that setting off. John, what about you? Did your Christmas go perfect? No. Oh, so you got some help from a store associate. Nice. I like it. Yeah, I did manage to set my smoke detector off while cooking on Christmas morning. So, that's kind of standard around our house.
I'm sure the kids didn't make fun of you at all, right?
Too many things going on at once, and, overdid the bacon just a little bit. Hey, Chris, what is your Christmas fail? Thanks for calling in.
One of the funnier things that happened in my family, we were for years drawing names, and we didn't realize this was going on, but myself, my brother, and my dad all had gotten our names amongst us, and we all went to the same store and bought the same toolkit for all of us. Exact same brand, everything.
Now that's awesome.
Yes, and of course, you don't know what's coming, so the first thing that happened, I think my brother opened his up, and I hear him telling his wife, "Oh my God, we screwed up. I got the gift I'm giving him." Because this, I know, and then it got really funny when we all opened them up, and we were all laughing because we all knew what we liked and what we needed. And
great minds think alike. I like that.
Yeah, it was just really weird, though, but it happens.
Well, I like that we can laugh about, a few fails on Christmas. It always makes for some, good memories when things don't go exactly as planned. And of course, for a lot of folks, things did not go exactly as planned with the travel nightmares that we have been seeing. We have some other great guests coming up. We are going to be speaking with Congressman Luetkemeyer at 8:10. We're going to talk to him about the government spending bill. we went through some of the laundry list of the crazy things that were in there, but I think also there was an article in the Columbia Missourian about some of that money is actually going to Mizzou. So I want to go over what of that money might actually end up here in mid-Missouri. And then also, as like a personal question, how do you review, how many pages was that bill? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds in 24 hours? I want to know that too. So we'll be talking to Congressman Luetkemeyer at 8:10. You're listening to Wake Up Mid-Missouri. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri, and this is Stephanie Bell sitting in for Branden Rathert. After all that illness, I think he deserves a little bit of rest. We are glad to have producer Hannah back with us this morning, and you sound as good as new, Hannah, honestly.
Yeah, some time off did me well.
Good. Well, we are excited to welcome Congressman Luetkemeyer into the show. A lot has been happening in D.C. under some pretty tight deadlines. Congressman Luetkemeyer, tell us about this latest government spending bill. What do we need to know?
Well, I think it's a typical spending bill from the standpoint that extends all existing programs, plus a bunch of other stuff in there that doesn't need to be in there. We're very disappointed with some of the Democrat plus-ups and the fact that they didn't do anything with the border wall. They plussed up some things there to take care of the detainees, but they did nothing to improve the border patrol's ability to control the border. There's a lot of money in here for more Green New Deal stuff, and unfortunately, it's just a compilation of one last lick by the Democrats to get their wish list of things done, and that's kind of what it boils down to. Yeah, we're facing a crisis with the men and women in the military from the standpoint that a lot of them are getting out. The recruiting is way, way down. I can tell you from the number of applicants that we have for the military academies that we normally have anywhere from 18 to 30, and this year we had a total of 8. That's really significant, and that's kind of the problem that's going across the board for the military itself. So to be able to retain those folks, actually keep up with inflation, to allow them to be able to, there are some of our citizens too that are putting their lives on the line and need to be rewarded for that. And it's high time we be able to reward them for staying around, incentivize them to stay around, and hopefully incentivize more people to come and participate in the military as well.
Congressman, we appreciate you joining us, and we'll look forward to having you on more regularly, and you're going to represent part of Columbia now in the new Congress, and Ashland and Hartsburg. You've also got Cooper County, so our listeners in Boonville, and also Montauk County, so the folks in Tipton and California you'll be representing as well. I'd like your take if you have heard anything. I've been following, you probably heard my reporting about the Geiger Gas Company based in Boonville. They're a Missouri-based company. Their main headquarters here is in Boonville. That's why the lawsuit was filed in Cooper County Circuit Court. But the Attorney General has filed a scathing lawsuit against them, alleging that they failed to refund customer prepayments for propane gas. There's some very specific allegations in his suit. I'm not going to get your take on the suit itself, but have you heard from any of your constituents that have been impacted by this closing and what's happened with this company?
Yeah, we did. I guess it was last Friday, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, or Thursday or Friday. And, we received news that they were closed down, and our constituents are out literally on the cold without any propane. And so we called the gentleman who's in charge of the Propane Association, and he was aware of it, and he was working to try and get other propane companies to come in and fill those needs. There is a law in place that says you can't, as a propane supplier, can't go in and fill somebody else's tanks. So that law, we had to go to Governor Parson and get that law waived so that the other companies could come in and keep people's propane tanks filled enough to get them through the holidays here so this thing could be resolved. So yeah, and apparently, from what we were told, it was sort of just we're open today and tomorrow they're closed, and nobody knew anything about it. There was no, I think they indicated they were getting ready to close down, but nobody knew the exact date, and they just basically turned the key on the door and walked away. And so, we've been involved in trying to be helpful to the propane companies that are left. and provide whatever information we can to the Attorney General should he require that. So, it's a very, very sad situation, very tragic for the company to go out of business. It wasn't handled quite well, and a lot of people are being hurt, but hopefully the Propane Association has been able to get their members to fill the gaps and fill the tanks, and we're happy that the governor stepped in and was able to waive that law for at least for a short period of time here, so people can, have their homes warm for the holidays and get this thing resolved.
Yeah, Congressman, we appreciate you following up on that. That's some good news, and that's developing. That's brand news to us. Your office has been involved too, so we appreciate that. And yes, the law itself is on the books. It has been waived essentially with the executive order. There will be an effort in the next legislative session to repeal that by Senator Caleb Rowden and Representative Tim Taylor. But we appreciate you following up. And if you hear anything else on Geiger, please let us know. We appreciate you keeping us posted.
We are
absolutely.
We are talking with Congressman Blaine Luetkemeyer.
I've always said from the beginning that's part of the solution. I think, enforcing the wall, enforcing the border itself is important to be able to have a sovereign nation. I mean, we're one of the few countries in the world that have a border like this, where we just let people come walking across, and basically nothing's happening to them. I mean, this is tragic what's going on, especially when you look at some of the nefarious characters that are coming across, as well as all the drugs and the crime that's coming with it. I've always said from the very beginning as well that, we've actually got two problems here. Not only do you have a problem with illegal immigration, you have a problem with legal immigration. We need to fix the legal immigration problem so you incentivize people to come in the country the right way. And you can sort through all these folks and make sure you keep the bad guys out, and that forces the bad guys to come in the wrong way, the illegal way, and you have a better chance of catching them then if you're not inundated by what's going on with the border right now. But you've got to have a system that allows people to come in here in an orderly fashion, track them, be able to find them when they're here. And if you have a legal immigration system that allows that to happen, you certainly incentivize them. But the people who come here just to want to work and support their families or come to visit or whatever, they can come in the right way. 60% of the people that come here don't want to stay here. They just want to come and work and go back home. So what we're seeing right now is basically one of Saul Alinsky's principles of just overwhelm the system to the point where it can't function, and then you can do what you want to with it. And that's one of his principles in his Rules for Radical book that is, it really is the primer on how you destroy a democratic society. And this is one of the ways you do is you overwhelm the system. That's what they're doing. And I think John, you hit on a perfect solution here, which I've said from the very beginning, is we need to be having our National Guard, Army Reserves, whoever, just taking a tour every so often. When they have 2 weeks of National Guard duty, they can go to the border for 2 weeks. And it turns around the country of people going down there and accommodating and helping out the Border Patrol. One of the things that's happening with the Border Patrol is they're sitting here spending all their time processing instead of being on the border, patrolling the border. And so if they just had some other people, for instance, the National Guard, and as rear support for them to do the processing of these people, it would certainly be helpful. So there's a lot of ways this situation could be helped. But it's obvious this administration does not want that to happen. They want the total discord that's going on there, the overwhelming of the border, and it's obvious. Then so it begs the question: to what end is this supposed to be going? And it's just pretty obvious. I think they just want to overwhelm the system and perhaps have some new voters for themselves, and just have a way to show that they're in charge and everybody else, stand aside. So it's really, really a bad situation. It's not going to get any better with these people in charge.
And I think you've really hit on some viable solutions for the border issue. One problem that's been weighing on my mind is these recent intentional attacks on power substations. We've had some over the holiday in Washington, before in North Carolina. What can be done at the federal level or at the state level, and how concerned should we be about these attacks?
Well, I think that they're going to continue. I mean, our power grid is vulnerable in so many ways. it needs to be protected. It's a perfect place for terrorists to attack us as a country, as a people. You knock out our power, we're totally, your cell phones aren't going to work because your cell towers don't work. You can't recharge them. Your cars and everything. If you got electric cars, how you going to get to work? It totally stops your economy. And so the power grid itself is weak. It hasn't been, we're in the process of spending money to repair it and upgrade it, but it's not there yet. These folks that have sat here and they say, well, we need to go to all electric cars. I mean, we are so far from being able to have even 50% of our cars be electric from the standpoint of a grid that can support the amount of electricity it would take to do this, to electrify our cars, plus the fact we haven't got enough ability to produce that much electricity. California, about 2 months ago, said, well, we're going to have electric cars by 2035, and 2 weeks later they said, hey, we can't. You can't electrify your car. We don't have electricity. The grid's in trouble. And just about a month ago, Switzerland decided that they will not allow any more electric cars to be sold in their country because the electric grid was going down. This is how impractical what's going on is with these people thinking about this. They do not understand the long-term ability of our country to not do this. It just isn't going to work. And while it sounds like a pretty nice plan, it doesn't really work. And so they don't really care about that. They don't care whether everything goes down. So, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, we really appreciate your just common sense insights into some of these DC problems, and we hear, these goals and aspirations up from the left, and folks who are on the ground and right here in Middle Missouri, these things they just don't add up, right? And so we appreciate your insights there. Before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, it's going to be an interesting year coming up. Republicans are going to take charge of the House, and that means some of the nonsense of these big spending bills is going to stop. It's still going to be a divided government, so it means you don't get everything you want. The other side is going to have the Senate, so you have to sit down. If you're going to move any sort of issues forward, it's going to have to be some sort of a compromise, or it doesn't get done at all, which can't happen with the budget bills and appropriations bills. So it's going to be a very contentious year, 2 years here. But by the same token, we're going to provide the kind of oversight that we haven't been able to provide because we've been in the minority. Now we'll have subpoena power. We can investigate Hunter Biden nonsense and the implications of the president involved in that, as well as all the other things that, for instance, I sit on the Small Business Committee and was not able to get Secretary Treasurer Yellen to show up in committee because she was required by law to have been there 3 times in the last 2 years and didn't show up once. And so I kept pestering the chairman to subpoena her. She wouldn't do it. Well, now whoever the new chairman is going to be of the Small Business Committee has the ability to do that and bring her in and say, what in the world's going on? Why are you afraid to talk to the Congress and report, which is your duty, your statutory duty to the Congress about what's going on? So I think we'll have the ability to investigate things, to hold the administration accountable, expose things, and hopefully the American people will see a difference in the way that government is handled whenever we get in charge. So
something to look forward to in 2023. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to each of you and your families and all the great folks listening this morning. Take care.
All right, coming up next, the Morning Bell. A new report out about the most recession-proof jobs. Are we safe, Hannah?
God, I hope so.
Coming up next. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Stephanie Bell in for Branden Rathert. It is time for the morning bell.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yay, I love it. All right, so business news coming from the one and only Stephanie Bell with a, what does Branden say? A special little twist. So a new report is out telling us what the most recession-proof jobs are. And the way the report was measuring, it was actually looking at 2022, which depending on who you talk to, we were kind of either in a recession or maybe we weren't. There's a debate there, but certainly I think there are signs pointing to maybe we are headed there in 2023. So I thought, hey, if you're looking for a career change, maybe you should try one of these out because apparently they're recession proof. So all of these showed in the last year median pay growth. So in a year when things were slowing, these folks were still doing pretty well. At the top of the list, any guesses?
Is it like blue collar jobs?
Yeah. Well, a waiter and a waitress. So yeah.
Okay.
I mean, people still have to eat, right? So, and I know I'm still trying to tip the best I can because I know a lot of people in those jobs, we're still struggling with staffing shortages. And so thanks to all those folks who show up and cook hot food and make those places available to everyone. So waiter and waitress, followed by, and this one is not blue collar, private banker. If you're a private banker, apparently all of those folks are saying, what do I do with my money now that inflation is hit and I'm paying all this for gas? So I assume a lot of people were calling their banker this year and asking for advice. But third, media director. Could that be that's kind of you, Hannah, right?
Yeah.
Folks in media, they said, media directors handle press releases, advertising campaigns, those kinds of things. And in that way, those things still need to occur. Of course, when businesses are feeling the effects of inflation in the economy, they're finding creative ways to reach people through advertising and other things. Rounding out number 4 and number 5 are police, fire, and ambulance dispatchers. Of course, those are essential roles. And so those folks saw 19% pay growth in 2022, earning a number 4 spot. And then finally, sales consultant. And a lot of those jobs, I know, you earn commissions and you can, the harder you work, the more you can make. So apparently if you're, a rocking sales consultant, you could have still picked up money in 2022 despite having, not a great economy. So the other thing I really think we should try to do, predictions. There was an interesting Wall Street Journal article that said the Wall Street and Fed flopped in trying to predict 2022. I want to know, are Wake Up Mid-Missouri folks better at predicting 2023 than others have been? I think we're going to have to do that later this week. Coming up, we are going to talk more about Christmas fails, and maybe we'll talk about Branden some more. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Stephanie Bell in for Branden Rathert. We have been covering all of the fun Christmas fun and fails. I heard, John, that last week you all celebrated Festivus without us. Festivus Light.
Oh, no.
What's the poll? Yeah, is it a Festivus poll? What's the poll called? Okay. And you
So should Stephanie and I be nervous that you guys did Festivus without us? Whoa. Oh, boy.
Of course he was. Of course he was. I know. I think he did share, like, what did he share? Like, what he appreciates. And I think, it's easy, especially to get frustrated around the holiday times. And I know not everyone loves Stephanie's list of things that suck. But noticeably, Wake Up Mid-Missouri is not on my list of things. And no one here is either. So,
well, Branden told you that he shared things that he appreciates about us. But, John, did that really happen? Or is Branden just pulling our leg?
He did.
That's true. Well, I know every time I have to sit in this chair, I really have an extra appreciation for Branden. And I will say, maybe I'm a sexist, but as a knock on differences between men and women, I would say men in my life are not always the best at multitasking, right? And I would put my husband in that category, right? If I'm talking to him about one thing, he has a hard time listening and doing something else at the same time. But of all the men I've ever met, Branden is, he can, and if you watch on YouTube, I like to wave into the camera. If you can see us on YouTube or on Facebook, you can see, you can't really see, but he's got 2 computer screens. He's got 2 TV screens. He's got the phone. I mean, there are so many screens, and I'm a screen girl, right? Like, I like my screens. At work, I got the big double screens. But he's got a board, he's got buttons, he's, watching the texter, all of that. And playing audio, it's a lot, to do all in real time. And he makes it look easy. He's sitting over here, he's laughing, he's looking relaxed. But it is an art for sure. And so I always appreciate, when I have the opportunity to sit here and am reminded of how much work he puts in every day to bring all of us along with him on Wake Up Midmo. What about you, Hannah?
Well, I was going to kind of bounce off of that. As much work as he puts into it, he still kind of maintains this like laid back kind of cool guy type of persona. And I think that's extra impressive.
It's the flip-flops.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to wear flip-flops.
That's true.
Right. I like it. Well, one thing Branden does say is the more localer, the more importanter. And I think that's a theme here throughout this show. So you've got to appreciate his little phrases that he likes. But one thing to remember is that today is the last day of candidate filing. And we talked to Mike Murphy of COMO Buz earlier this morning. He said, did he say 9 or 7? I think he said 9 candidates.
I thought he said 9.
For 4 spots. So on Columbia School Board, there's 4 spots open. And so if you were wanting to run for those, you need to get to your clerk's office or see your local city hall, wherever you are, because today, and that's a change in the law. And I think a lot of people traditionally in city government thought, usually I think it used to have to like January 10th.
Yes,
it used to be
absolutely.
after the first of the year. So you could kind of get through the holidays, make your choice, and you still had time. And I hope no one's sitting around today thinking, I still have time after the first of the year to get in and file. This is, I think, the first year at the new year where it's backed up. It was backed up for a previous filing period as well. But today is the last day, 5 p.m.
Yeah.
If you want to run for any election in April, you need to get in and get on the ballot.
And that was a bill that just did not get a whole lot of attention, media coverage. I mean, I remember it being filed. I believe it got piggybacked and maybe put on as an amendment on another bill. It did not pass as a standalone bill. But yes, that is correct. I believe it is the first year Governor Parsons signed that bill into law. And that does obviously impact today. I want to make one point. We have someone responding to the Geiger gas story on our website. she's saying two things. One, she's correct on. One, she is not correct on. And I certainly respect her opinion. Number one, she's absolutely correct. And we've emphasized this, Stephanie, you and I this morning. Geiger does not run that company anymore. And that's very important to know. The new company is using their name. Mm-hmm. So, and Randy Tobler and I have done I've been on almost every day talking about this lawsuit. And we've emphasized this because the Geigers, I'm sure, are taking some heat. They have nothing to do with it. They sold to this new, basically, LLC that came in to take over the company. But the lady on our Facebook page is saying it's not a Boonville-based company. It is a Boonville-based company. And I linked to the Attorney General's lawsuit. It calls him that directly. I linked to it. I mean, its principal place of business is Boonville. That's why the lawsuit was filed in Cooper County Circuit Court. I think where people get confused is they serve not just Boonville. They got a lot of customers here in Columbia. They've got them all over mid-Missouri, and most are in our listening area. But definitely it is not the Geigers here. And I think what you just heard in that live interview with Congressman Luetkemeyer sums it up. This story just keeps getting bigger. We got congressmen involved now, and the AG. No one can get a hold of this company. Mm-hmm. We believe the gentleman has some ties to Cottleville, which is in the St. Louis area, but it is a scathing lawsuit. I encourage people to read it. I linked to it, 939theeagle.com. It's on the KWS.com website as well. And it mentions several people here in mid-Missouri very clearly how much they paid for propane they didn't receive and how much their tanks are depleted right now. Even though it's going to get a little bit warmer, they've lost a lot, I'm sure, over the last couple of days. So we'll stay on top of it. But it's, until they can serve the guy, I don't know when the next court appearance is going to be because they can't reach him.
Yeah, and importantly, the Attorney General is asking folks if you've been affected and you haven't been in touch. He's saying you can file a complaint with his office. That's
right, 1-800-392-8222. But I always appreciate the feedback on our Facebook page, good questions and stuff. And yes, the lady, Lisa, that's responding is correct. It is not Geiger as we know them, and we've tried to make that very clear. They're still using the name, but this has nothing to do with the Geigers that used to run the company. Unfortunately for them, it's their name that's attached to this.
Now, the other big thing happening here locally was when I, pulled up some local websites, the top 3 headlines were various fires.
Yep.
And those fires are after the devastating fire we had just a couple weeks ago here in Columbia.
Yes.
So all of these in mid-Missouri. I think there was one in Jeff City, one in Russellville, one in Mexico, I believe.
Yes.
What do we know about these? John?
Mm-hmm. And as far as John had good information on both of those, obviously the Russellville, as far as Russellville, the senior housing, the only thing left is the brick foundation. Everything else is destroyed, and those are seniors. And several of what I remember of covering that, I'm sure it's still the same thing. A lot of those are low-income seniors, so hopefully they'll be able to find a place to live, as John mentioned, the Red Cross helping them. We had 2 fires in Mexico, and we're not sure they were related, but both happened, Stephanie and John, on Friday morning early, about 1:15. The big one was on West Breckenridge about 1:15 in the morning. Fire, by the time the firefighters got there within just a couple of minutes, and the fire was already heavy flames burning through the roof of the building. A 60-year-old woman, Ruth Ann Stewart, died in that fire. 9 apartments, the office destroyed. They brought in the state fire marshal's office. As they were battling that, there was another fire that broke out nearby on a street called Elmwood Drive in Mexico, and they didn't have enough manpower, so they had to bring in the Little Dixie Fire District to battle that under mutual aid. Both fires under investigation, and I think this is significant, although they won't elaborate. Anyone with information about either fire urged to call Crime Stoppers in Mexico, 573 473-8477. I did reach out to Bryce Mesco to try to get more. I've not heard back. But the fact that they want people to call Crime Stoppers, that's significant.
It is. Well, we are going to be doing leftovers here in just a couple of minutes. Open up that fridge. I know we're going to be talking about money for Mizzou, updates on solar farms right here in mid-Missouri. We've got a lot coming up in just a few minutes here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri with Stephanie Bell sitting in for Branden Rathert. We are going to do some leftovers. So one thing we hit on earlier that I want to just touch on again, ranked choice. I get to say, I told you so. Ranked choice voting proposals are back. They've already filed. Dave Rowland, who many of you will know from his appearances on The Gary Nolan Show, which is up next at 9. He has filed 3 initiatives on ranked choice voting with Secretary of State already, which would be go forward in 2024, presumably. So if you're interested in that, take a look. But I said I thought they would be back, and it looks like they are going to try. John, what do you have for leftovers? Are they usually open on Saturday? I thought so. And, my law office is right there in downtown Jeff, so I always enjoy the stream of people who walk their payments in person on the last day, typically. Yeah, a lot. And as a matter of principle, I think, and with as high as those bills were coming in this year, I can suspect a lot of people are waiting to the last minute. Missouri minimum wage is going up after the start of the new year as a result of, I think it was an 18 law. Is that right, John? Yeah, so for those folks who are earning minimum wage, they might get a little bit of a bump in 2023. And then another something we've covered here is the solar farm regulations in Boone County. So with all this talk of EVs and grid infrastructure and everything else we've been on today, Boone County is moving forward with some hearings on a large-scale solar farm, and that is through the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then also there are those solar farm regulations that are making their way through as well, which could affect upcoming projects. Hannah, do you have anything for leftovers?
Well, we had a listener just call in with a fact check. I guess
Oops.
Those payments are due December 31st. I think John accidentally said January 31st. So...
Don't give anyone a penalty. What happens if you pay late? I assume you pay a penalty. I don't know.
Just tell them that John Marsh on KWOS told them.
They said it was.
And the presser I got, I'm going back to the email that I got from the presiding commissioner that says, quote, must be postmarked no later than January 31st.
Oops. All right.
Whoopsie.
Well, yes, get those payments in quickly. And if you want to walk it in on the last day, that is certainly your right. Another thing that I saw, we listed out all of the crazy animal provisions and there was some weird stuff in that government spending bill. But I know the local papers here had a highlight of actual money that was dedicated to Mizzou. And I know some of the money was going to go to Next Gen, but it sounds like our folks working hard for us there in D.C. Got some money that might be spent right here in mid-Missouri. So let's see, $61 million on construction and equipment for that Next Gen Precision Health building, $5 million for MU Water Resources Center, and $3 million for an endowment fund for to recruit and retain faculty in precision healthcare. So those are all good things. A couple other items were some funding for a school of dentistry in Kansas City, and some $26 million for Missouri University of Science and Technology, which is RALA, right? And so a lot of money in that bill, a lot of money for a lot of things in that bill, but at least it sounds like Missouri's bringing home the bacon with respect to education in that bill. So that was kind of nice to see. What else are we missing, friends? Oh. Yeah, that's big time news in Jefferson City. More than $500,000. Wow. Well, we are really excited for this week. We hope you are finding a week of rest here between 2 major holidays. I know a lot of folks are back at work, but some people kind of take this week to reset. So we hope you take our advice from my sister about the enneagram and learn something about yourself and maybe something about the folks around you. You too, John. We're going to put you and Brian through the test and figure out what your number is so we know. He's like, I'm not doing that. But we are excited. Ashley Emmel will be here on Friday. She often sits in with Branden when I'm out of town, and I've never co-hosted a show with her before, so I'm very excited. And then I think we'll finally outnumber the guys on the show, right, Hannah? So,
oh yeah,
Friday we're gonna have a little bit of fun. But up for tomorrow, we talked about initiative petition reform, which we know is going to be a hot topic in the upcoming legislative session. But another upcoming hot topic, obviously, is sports betting. It's been on the table the last couple sessions. We've heard calls for it from prominent leaders in the legislature. It hasn't been able to cross the line. So Mark Ellinger, my law partner, will be joining us. He is an expert in gaming law and can provide some insights about what is on the table there. We're also going to have Andrew Bailey on the show, who will be Missouri's next Attorney General. He's done some interviews. I've been very, very impressed with him so far. He's made some new hires since the last time I've seen him interviewed. And so I want to ask him about that and how the transition is going. Really excited to talk with him. And then we're also going to have Mike Hafner with us. He is a principal at Spartan Strategies. He's run many campaigns in Missouri, and want to talk to him about the changing landscape of political campaigns in Missouri. What looks different now from when he first started in politics, and what he expects in the 2024 cycle. Like I said, a great week here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. We are excited for it, and we're glad Hannah's back. And we're excited for the Gary Nolan Show, which is coming up next. See ya.